Hmm? The 32nd session of the Senate in the third regular session of the 16th Congress is hereby called to order. May I ask everyone to rise for a minute of silent prayer. Thank you. The Secretary will call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Onasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marco, Susmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
13 senators are present. The chair declares the presence of a quorum. The majority leader is recognized.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, dear colleagues. Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 31st session, October 6, 2015, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none, the reading of the journal of the previous session is hereby dispensed with, and the same is hereby approved.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider on third reading House Bill number 3654 on the Talinga National High School, Mr. President.
Consideration of the measure is in order.
With the consent of the body, may we request the Secretary to read only the title of the bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and Record the whole text thereof.
The Secretary will do so.
House Bill number 3654, an act separating the Bakungan National High School Talinga Annex in Barangay Talinga, Municipality of Leon B, Postigo, Province of Zamboanga del Norte, from the Bakungan National High School, converting it into an independent national high school be known as Talinga National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Majority Leader.
Sir President, copies of the measure as approved on second reading have been distributed to the members of the Senate last September 29, 2015, thereby complying with the 3-day rule found under Section 26, Paragraph 2, Article 6 of the 1987 Constitution. We are thus ready to approve the measure on third reading. I ask for a roll call vote.
Secretary will conduct the roll call vote.
Senator Sangara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan, Peter Compañero S., Cayetano P.I.S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Onasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marco, Susmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
16 affirmative votes, no negative vote, no abstention. House Bill 3654 is hereby approved on third reading.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider on third reading House Bill number 4287 on the Little Baguio National High School.
Any objection? Hearing none, in order.
With the consent of the body, may request the Secretary to read only the title of the said bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and Record the whole text thereof.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
House Bill number 4287, an act separating the Halapitan National High School, Little Baguio Annex in Barangay Little Baguio, Municipality of San Fernando, Province of Bukidnon, from the Halapitan National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Little Baguio National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Sir President, copies of this measure as approved on second reading have been distributed to the members of the Senate last September 29, 2015, thereby complying with the 3-day rule found under Section 26, Paragraph 2, Article 6 of the 1987 Philippine Constitution. We are ready to approve the measure in third reading. I ask for a roll call vote, Mr. President.
Secretary will conduct the roll call vote.
Honorable Senator Sangara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan, Peter Compañero S., Cayetano P.I.S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Onasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Susmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 4287 is approved on third reading.
Sir President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider on third reading House Bill number 4263, the Congulo National High School, Mr. President.
Consideration of the measure is in order.
With the consent of our colleagues, may I request the Secretary to read only the title of the said bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and record the whole text thereof.
The Secretary will do so.
House Bill number 4263, an act separating the Libertad National High School, Colongolo, Annex in Barangay Colongolo, Municipality of Surala, Province of South Cotabato, from the Libertad National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Colongolo National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Copies of the said measure as approved on second reading, Mr. President, have been distributed to the members of the Senate last September 29, 2015, thereby complying with the requirements of the Philippine Constitution. We are thus ready to approve the measure on third reading. I ask for a roll call vote.
Secretary will conduct the roll call vote.
Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan, Peter Companya Ruiz, Cayetano P.I.S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Smeña, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 4263 is approved on third reading.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the consent of our colleagues, I move that we consider on third reading House Bill number 4854 on the Buluron National High School, Mr. President.
In order.
With the consent of the body, may I request the Secretary to read only the title of the said bill without prejudice to inserting
Secretary
into
will
the
do
Senate Journal and record the whole text thereof.
The Secretary will do so.
House Bill number 4854, an act separating the Midsalip National High School, Buluron, Annex in Barangay Buluron, Municipality of Midsalip, Province of Zamboanga del Sur, from Midsalip National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Buluron National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Mr. President, on September 29, 2015, members of the Senate received copies of this measure as approved on second reading, thereby complying with the three-day rule found under the Philippine Constitution. We are thus ready to approve the measure on third reading. I move for a roll call vote.
Secretary will conduct the roll call vote.
Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan, Peter Companya Ruiz, Cayetano P.I.S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
16 senators cast affirmative votes, no abstention, no negative votes. House Bill 4824 is approved on third reading.
With the consent of our colleagues, I move that we consider on third reading House Bill number 4631 on the St. Peter National High School, Mr. President.
In order.
With the consent of the body, may I request the Secretary to read only the title of the said bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and record the whole text thereof.
The Secretary will do so.
House Bill number 4631, an act separating the Silae National High School, St. Peter Annex in Barangay St. Peter, City of Malaybalay, Province of Bukidnon, from the Silae National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as St. Peter National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Mr. President, on September 29, 2015, the members of the Senate received their copy of this measure as approved in second reading, thereby complying with the three-day rule as found in the Philippine Constitution. We are thus ready to approve the measure in third reading. I move for a roll call vote.
Secretary will conduct the roll call vote.
Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, Alan, Peter Companya Ruiz, Cayetano P.I.S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Poe, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
16 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 4631 is approved on third reading.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider in third reading House Bill number 4288 on the Santa Filomena School of Arts and Trades, Mr. President.
In order.
With the consent of the body, may I request the Secretary to read only the title of the said bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and record the whole text thereof.
The Secretary will do so.
House Bill number 4288, an act separating the Pio Dalim Memorial School of Arts and Trades, Santa Filomena Annex in Barangay Santa Filomena, Municipality of Calanasan, Province of Apayao, from the Pio Dalim Memorial High School of Arts and Trades, converting it into an independent National Arts and Trades High School to be known as Santa Filomena School of Arts and Trades and appropriating funds therefore.
Mr. President, on September 29, 2015, copies of the measure on second reading were distributed to all members of the Senate, thereby complying with the three-day rule under the Philippine Constitution. We are thus ready to approve the measure on third reading. I move for a roll call vote.
Secretary will conduct a roll call vote.
Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, Alan, Peter Companya Ruiz, Cayetano, P.I.S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Unasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Smenya, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
15 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 4288 is approved on third reading.
Sir President, with consent of the Senate, I move that we consider in third reading House Bill number 3653 on Tinuyop National High School.
In order.
With the consent of the body, may I request the Secretary to read only the title of the said bill without prejudice to inserting into the Senate Journal and Record the whole text thereof.
Secretary will do so.
House Bill number 3653, an act separating the Bakungan National High School, Tinuyop Annex in Barangay Tinuyop, Municipality of Leon B. Postigo, Province of Zamboanga del Norte, from the Bakungan National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Tinuyop National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Sir President, on September 29, 2015, copies of the measure as approved on second reading were distributed to all members of the Senate, thereby complying with the 3-day rule found under the Philippine Constitution. We are thus ready to approve the measure on third reading. I move for a roll call vote.
Secretary will conduct a roll call vote.
Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, Alan, Peter Companya Ruiz, Cayetano, P.I.S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Smenya, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
15 affirmative votes, no negative votes, no abstention. House Bill 3653 is approved on third reading.
Sir President, may we just welcome to the Senate and recognize the presence of Arellano University AB Political Science students headed by John Michael Flores. May we ask you to stand up to be recognized?
We recognize and make record the presence of Arellano University of Political Science students led by John Michael Flores.
We also have the UP School of Economics Student Council headed by Samantha Joy Cinco, Student Rights and Welfare Counselor. May we also request them to stand up to be recognized?
We recognize the presence of the economics, UP School of Economics students led by Samantha Jean Cinco, Student Rights and Welfare Counselor.
Sir President, we also have the Kids House Child Development Center Integrated School headed by the Directress, Ms. Salina Natividad.
Students of Kids House Child Development Center Integrated School led by Ms. Natividad. The directress is recognized and and presence is made of record.
Sir President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we recognize the Minority Leader, Senator Juan Ponce Enrile, to speak on a matter of public interest.
Senator Juan Ponce Enrile is recognized on a matter of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would have delivered this speech earlier, but unfortunately I got sick, and so it has to be delivered today before we go on recess. Mr. President, during my detention at the Philippine National Police General Hospital at Camp Crame, the central headquarters of the Philippine National Police, in the morning of January 28 this year, I learned with deep sadness and shock about the gruesome slaughter of the members of our elite PNP Special Action Force. The SAF forces were then on a dangerous and delicate mission called Oplan Exodus in the remote, almost inaccessible barangay of Tucan, Nalipaw, in the town of Mamasapano, Maguindanao, to capture two of the most wanted terrorists, identified as Zulkifli Abdhir, also known as Marwan, an alleged Malaysian national, and Ahmad Akman Usman, a Filipino. This development and the details later provided by news headlines and reports and actual footages depicting the merciless, cruel, and brutal murder of a large number of our Special Action Forces, where 44 valiant men perished in the hands of the enemy and their cuddlers, gripped the nation with grief and anger. With such grief and anger came disappointment and confusion. In the confines of my hospital detention facility, my mind too was flooded with questions on the disturbing events and factors which apparently led to the tragic fate of the SAF 44. I understand the carnage started at dawn of Sunday, January 25, and lasted until late in the afternoon of that day. In those critical moments when the battle was apparently going on, I recall, Mr. President, no word was uttered from the palace, from Malacanang. No word was uttered from the Armed Forces of the Philippines. No word was uttered from the Philippine National Police. None at all from any agency of government or from the media. There was an ominous silence in the entire nation about this event. And the question that reverberated in my mind was, why? Why such a very important and gruesome event never appeared at all in the press in those moments? What happened? Was there a government paralysis during those tense moments, so much so that nothing was said about this event? Where was the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, as well as his general staff? Did they know what was going on in Mama Sapano in those critical moments? If they did, why was there no reaction at all, one way or the other? Mr. President, little was said or mentioned about those who survived and were wounded in the battle, except that they were brought to the hospital for treatment and that they would be called upon to shed more lights to what actually happened or transpired. A few days later, the survivors of the Mama Sapano carnage were brought to the building where I was detained. They stayed with me in that building for quite some time. I had several personal encounters with them and their families. These were occasions too for me to talk to some of them, and they related their frightening recollections of the bloody massacre. At the height of the investigations being conducted by different agencies and bodies, including the Senate, the survivors and their dependents had expressed to me their resentment and disenchantment, as it seemed to some of them that the death of the SAF 44 was now largely being exploited to serve political ends, some for political propaganda. The blame game had also begun, all at the expense of unraveling the truth about their misfortune and the greater misfortune of the loss of their brothers in the SAF. My heart went out to General Leonardo Espina, who broke down in tears while in Congress as he narrated what he called the, quote, overkill, unquote, of his men. The brutality they suffered, as he questioned how this could happen when supposedly there was, quote, a peace process, unquote, going on. He begged for the truth and fairness and justice for the fallen 44. Sub-Director Getulio Peñas, a man of impeccable service record, who was being blamed and bashed by some quarters as well, could not control his tears as he wept for his men. I promised the survivors, Mr. President, that I would bring up their case to the Senate should I be given the opportunity to return to the Senate in my capacity as a member of this chamber, and that is why I'm standing before you today to exactly fulfill that promise. This is why this afternoon, in accord with my promise to them, I would like to inquire from the entire Senate and know the status of the much-publicized committee report on the Senate inquiry conducted and concluded on the Mama Sapano incident, supposedly in aid of legislation conducted by the Senate through its committee. Mr. President, all too many of our so-called inquiries in aid of legislation, after being terminated and the reports thereon signed, filed, and publicized, end up as such committee reports that never reach, much less discussed, debated, and voted upon in plenary of this chamber. I believe, Mr. President, we owe it as a matter of solemn duty to the sub-members who perished, as well as to those who survived by the grace of the Almighty, and to their bereaved families, who until now are crying for justice, to place this actual matter into the records of the Senate plenary session of this highest chamber of the country. It is not only for the courage, the valor, and the sacrifices of the fallen and surviving sub-members in that ghastly and brutal carnage to be placed in the annals of this august chamber, but also to demonstrate to the general public and to let the people know how their Senate, we, the elected sovereign representatives of the people, dealt with the complex issues that were discovered and brought to light during the Senate investigation. They must know as well how each member of the Senate took the respective stance and duties in the findings of the investigation and the public recommendations contained in the report. So far, nothing has happened like this to my knowledge. The survivors, Mr. President, of the national tragedy in Mama Sapano and the families of the fallen members of the Sub-44 had expressed their fervent hopes and prayers that only the real truth would come out of the investigations, that in searching for that truth, the blood shed, the lives lost, the extreme sacrifices borne and suffered, and the heroism displayed by those gallant, valiant, and fallen men of the law in carrying out courageously their perilous police mission in the service of the Republic would not be dimmed by the passing of time. They nurse the understandable fear that the injustice done to them would just as quickly be drowned by the noise and frenzy of the 2016 election fever. And that if tragedy is at all mentioned, such would only be used for political propaganda. After all, many among us who express their sympathies and their commitment for justice to be served, and for those responsible to be held fully accountable, are now aspiring to be the next top leaders of this nation. Indeed, that would be another and perhaps more painful tragedy if that will be the case, Mr. President. Now and in the future, let us make sure that the youthful lives of the fallen and martyred Sub-44, who were all too suddenly and brutally snatched from their loved ones, would not be buried in the annals of history and the annals of the institution, or as just another one of those unfortunate incidents. Apart from my promise to the survivors of the Mama Sapano carnage and to the families of those who perished in that battlefield, Mr. President, my personal concern in the Mama Sapano massacre involves the safety, the security, the well-being of the Filipino people, and the national interest of this republic. It would be an understatement to say that the Mama Sapano incident has had a far-reaching effect on the people's sentiments, on the implication and the fate of the Mangsamoro Basic Bill that is before us now. I therefore reiterate, Mr. President, my inquiry into the status of the Senate Committee report and ask that the same be deliberated upon in plenary of this chamber. Thank you, Mr. President.
The chair of the Committee on Local Governments is recognized.
Mr. President,
I'm sorry.
Senator Po for a
I'm sorry.
manifestation.
On public order, I'm sorry. On public order is recognized.
Mr. President, as Chair of the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs, allow me to state the following. For the Mama Sapano hearing, we had 5 public hearings, 5 executive sessions, a committee report signed by 21 of our colleagues, and we plan, and we also had, the committee report 120 has been submitted by the committee. We plan to sponsor and have the committee report sponsored and debated at the soonest possible time. We considered, first and foremost, the benefits of our staff and that of the benefits that were received by their families. I share the sentiments that this is an important deliberation of the Senate, and I agree with the great minority leader of the Senate that this should be tackled and be brought to conclusion. In addition, we also provided a copy to the Ombudsman, the DOJ, the PNP, and the Internal Affairs Office of the PNP. At the same time, we are also ongoing with our hearings on PNP modernization, and the lessons learned from the SAF incident is taken into account in all of our committee hearings and deliberations so that we may come up with legislation that will truly prevent such a tragedy from happening again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. President, the thrust of my inquiry is whether there was a plenary debate on that report. And if there is none, I think it's our duty to do it. And if nobody will make a motion, I'll make the proper motion so that that matter will be openly discussed in this chamber. Nothing is to be put under the rug. Everything must come out. I'm demanding that every moment of those hours from dawn of Sunday when the event started until it ended that same day, the movement, the action, the presence or the absence of every high official of government in this country must be accounted for. They are presidents 24 hours of the day, 7 weeks of the week, 7 days of the week, 30 days of the month, 365 days of the year, for 6 years, Mr. President. I've been long enough in this government to know this, and there are a lot of questions that I would like to ask. If we want to really be open and transparent to the people, then we must do this. Otherwise, there will be the suspicion that we are hiding something. And I personally think that we are hiding something.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I fully support the transparency call of Senator Enrile. In fact, as I mentioned, We submitted this committee report already, and we are waiting for the majority leader to schedule this for plenary debates. In fact, the majority leader himself has already manifested months ago that this will be scheduled, and we are awaiting that, Mr. President. But again, just for the record, the committee has already submitted the committee report, and we are awaiting the schedule of this plenary debate. And
If
again,
nobody has made the motion, Mr. President, then as a part of my privileged speech, I move that we bring back to the Senate that committee report and discuss it in plenary in full debate.
Sir President,
Mr. Majority Leader.
first of all, to dispose of the motion, I do not have any objection, and subject to the Senate calendar, we will schedule it, Mr. President, for a full discussion of the plenary. Just a manifestation, Mr. President, if the senators recall, I wrote a letter to the chairperson of the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs asking for the reopening of the hearing, precisely because in the plenary we will only be discussing among ourselves, and the people involved, especially in the government, will not be here. But we agreed, together with the Senate President and Senator Poe, that the BBL discussions can also be used as a venue to debate and to come out with the information we needed, because the resource persons will also be behind the sponsor, Senator Marcos. No? But now that there is a motion and a call by a colleague and there are no objections, we will call for a debate, and we will put it on the calendar, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. We can discuss this in the BBL, but I think we owe it to the nation to focus on this on its own. 44 lives, not one, not two, not three, but 44 lives of our soldiery died and perished in that event, and we are going to take it lightly? No way.
Well, the majority leader has already manifested that he will schedule this. He will put this in the calendar of the Senate plenary sessions. That at that point, the sponsor of the measure, Senator Poe, will sponsor the committee report, and in accordance with our procedure, it will be debated upon at that point.
Yes.
So I think that should settle the matter. We all support the call of Senator Enrile for the calendaring of the committee report.
And Mr. President, despite disagreements on the process, let me assure our minority leader, none of us here have taken this lightly. In fact, many of us here have been very passionate about this issue, but we thank him today for reminding us that there has to be closure on this issue. Sir President, with the permission of the minority leader, I move to refer the speech to the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
All right. Sorry for
we accept, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we transfer Senate Bill number 2930 under Committee Report number 218 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
All right.
Mr.
Before
President.
we act on the motion of the majority leader, Senator Escudero is recognized.
Mr. President, a point of information. Should the speech of Senator Enrile should not the speech of Senator Enrile be referred to the Committee on Rules? Because he ended the speech with a motion to calendar the committee report submitted by Senator Poe. Bring it back to her committee might not serve the purpose. I submit to the judgment and wisdom of the majority leader and the presiding officer, Mr. President.
Sir President, if that is a motion, I do not object. I second
right.
the motion to refer to the Committee on Rules instead of the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
The chair concurs with the ruling of the majority leader as chair of the Rules Committee. The matter is so referred to the Rules Committee.
Thank you, Mr. President.
There is a pending motion for that we consider.
To
There is
tran-
no consideration of
To
Senate
transfer
Bill.
Senate Bill number 2930 under Committee Report 218 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders, Mr. President.
So transferred.
With the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider Senate Bill 2930 under Committee Report 218.
Consideration of the measure is in order.
Sir President, I move that, and with the permission of the body, I move that the Secretary read only the title of the said measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Number 2930, an act amending Section 69 and 261CC of Batas Pambansa bilang 881, otherwise known as the Omnibus Election Code of the Philippines as amended and for other purposes.
Mr.
Majority
President,
Leader.
I move that we recognize Senator Pimentel to sponsor the said measure.
Senator Pimentel is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Mr. President, my esteemed colleagues, good afternoon. Engaging in electoral exercises is no joking matter. In this regard, we must bear in mind that public office is a public trust. Therefore, each and every one of us must be constantly reminded that the exercise of the right of suffrage cannot be taken for granted. In the same breath, the electorate must also accept that running for public office cannot be trifled with as well. For this reason, all of us here in this chamber are duty-bound as lawmakers to protect the sanctity of elections with utmost vigilance. Any act or device that degrades or demeans this democratic exercise must be removed as a skilled surgeon would a cancerous mass. My fellow senators, as some of you may know from personal experience, nuisance candidates qualify as a device that degrades or demeans the electoral process. Some of those who have filed certificates of candidacy have done so for a fee without any genuine intention to serve the public. Their sole intention is to disrupt the candidacy of others by confusing voters. Their only purpose in running for office is to cause unnecessary havoc in the campaign of a bona fide candidate that they have targeted in order to contribute to the latter's electoral defeat. My dear colleagues, the presence of nuisance candidates is particularly detrimental to the sanctity of the election process. They absolutely degrade and demean the entire electoral process. Therefore, I stand before you today to sponsor and seek your support for the passage of Senate Bill number 2930, entitled An Act Amending Sections 69 and 261, paragraphs CC of Batas Pambansa bilang 881, otherwise known as the Omnibus Election Code of the Philippines as amended and for other purposes. I would like to reiterate, Mr. President, that the state has an unequivocal mandate to make sure that elections are fair and truly reflective of the will of the people. In the pursuit of this paramount goal, this chamber is obligated to ensure that all those who aspire to serve the public through elected office are not only qualified under the law and the Constitution, but also have intentions which are pure and sincere. Hence, the first amendment provided in this bill adds to the list of circumstances that identifies a nuisance candidate. A certificate of candidacy can now be denied or cancelled if it can be shown that the same was filed to obtain money, profit, or any other consideration. It cannot be emphasized enough. Running for public office should never be treated as a business transaction. Make no mistake about it, public office is first and foremost about serving the people. Indeed, if we are to truly abide by the democratic and republican ideals set forth in our Constitution, then it is incumbent upon this chamber to guarantee that bona fide candidates for public office are free from any form of harassment. Hence, the second amendment proposed in this bill is to clearly designate nuisance candidacy as an election offense. Therefore, Mr. President, my dear colleagues in this chamber, this bill should be approved with dispatch so as to do away with the evil practice of using one's candidacy for an elective position as a means to unlawfully enrich oneself as well as to degrade the entire electoral process. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Pimentel. The Majority Leader is recognized.
Mr. President, we thank Senator Pimentel for the very timely bill, as the filing for candidacy certificate of candidacy next week, and many have been victimized by nuisance candidates. I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2930 under Committee Report 218.
Suspended.
Mr. President, just an administrative matter. With the permission of the body, I move that we designate the following as the members of the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of Senate Bill 2909 and House Bill 6007. For the majority, Senator Bam Aquino, Senator Sani Angara, Senator Coco Pimentel, and Senator T.G. Gingona. For the minority, Senator J.V. Ejercito, Mr. President.
So constituted.
Mr. President, we are in receipt of the Conference Committee report on the disagreeing provisions of Senate Bill 2669 and House Bill 5831 on the tax incentives, management, and transparency. Copies of the report have been distributed to the senators. Sir President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we consider the aforesaid committee report, Conference Committee report.
In order.
Sir President, I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Sani Angara, to present the bicameral conference.
Senator Angara is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Majority Leader, distinguished colleagues. On behalf of the Senate panel, composed of Senators Recto, Aquino, Villar, Ejercito, and myself, I would like to report to the august body the reconciled version of Senate Bill 2669 and House Bill 5831 on tax incentives, management, and transparency, or the TIMTA bill. The conferees met on September 9, 2015, and reconciled the said two versions. As part of the sponsorship speech and the joint explanation and the bicameral report, I move that they be included as part of the report to the body and inserted into the record, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the Secretary is directed to consider as read the report and insert the same into the record.
Mr. President, I move for the adoption of the conference report in the hope that the reconciled version will promote fiscal accountability and transparency, and it will enable the government to properly review and analyze the economic impact of tax and incentive policy. So move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, the Bicameral Conference Committee and the joint explanation of the Conference Committee on disagreeing provisions of House Bill 5831 and Senate Bill 2669 is hereby adopted. Thank you, Senator Angara.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Majority Leader.
Mr. President, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill 2794 under Committee Report Number 170. This is the bill on the new anti-carnapping, Mr. President.
Consideration of the motion is in order.
Mr. President, the parliamentary status is that the sponsor has delivered the sponsorship speech last June 3, 2014. I thus move that we open the period for interpellations. Anti-carnapping. Mr. President, may I move for a minute suspension?
1 minute suspension.
Ready to resume?
Session is resumed.
Mr. President, upon consultation with the minority group and the other senators who wishes for more time to formulate their questions and to bring to the floor their interpellations, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill 2794 under Committee Report Number 170.
So suspended.
Mr. President, may I ask for a minute suspension?
1 minute suspension.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Secretary will read the reference of business.
Message of the President of the Philippines. Letter of His Excellency President Benigno Aquino III, dated 1 October 2015, certifying to the necessity of the immediate enactment of House Number 6132 entitled an Act appropriating funds for the operation of the Government of the Republic of the Philippines from January 1, to December 31, 2016, and for other purposes, in order to address the need to maintain continuous government operations following the end of the current fiscal year, to expedite the funding of various programs, projects, and activities for fiscal year 2016, and to ensure budgetary preparedness that will enable the government to effectively perform its constitutional mandate.
Committee on Rules.
Bills on first reading, Senate number 2984, an act granting automatic PhilHealth coverage for all women about to give birth and their newborn children, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 7875 as amended by RA number 10608-606, otherwise known as the National Health Insurance Act of 2013, providing funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Recto.
Health, Demography, Women, Children, Family Relations, Gender Equality.
Senate number 2985, an act granting mandatory PhilHealth coverage to all persons with disability, amending for the purpose RA 7277 as amended, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for persons with disability, providing funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Recto.
Health and Demography, Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development.
Senate number 2986, an act providing for a full tuition subsidy for students enrolled in state universities and colleges, SUCs, and appropriating funds therefore Senator Recto.
Education, Arts and Culture, Finance.
Resolutions, PS Resolution number 1609, directing the Senate Committee on Government, Corporations, and Public Enterprises to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation to look into the powers and mandate of the Manila International Airport Authority, MIAA, in the light of its implementation of its Memorandum Circular number 8 series of 2014 on the integration of the international passenger service fee or terminal fee in the airline tickets with the end in view of determining whether or not the said Memorandum Circular has addressed the problems that MIAA sought to address. Senator Cynthia Villar.
Government, Corporations, and Public Enterprises.
Yes, Resolution number 1610, directing the appropriate Senate Committee to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on the increasing complaints against the Office for Transport Security involving overseas Filipino workers, with the end in view of ensuring that our overseas Filipino workers and other flight passengers will not be subjected to exploitation, and to see to it that the integrity of the Office for Transport Security and other airport personnel be upheld. Senator Cynthia Villar.
Public Services.
Yes, Resolution number 1611, honoring Elpidio Quirino, a distinguished former member of the Senate and the House of Representatives, former Vice President and 6th President of the Philippines, on the occasion of his 125th birth anniversary, for his contribution to the birth, growth, and early years of the Commonwealth and Republic of the Philippines, introduced by Senator Drilon.
Rules.
Communication letter from the Office of the President of the Philippines, transmitting to the Senate 2 original copies of Republic Act number 10685, entitled an act granting Philippine citizenship to Peter Leslie Wallace, which was signed by His Excellency President Benigno Aquino III.
Archives.
Committee report number 285, prepared, submitted jointly by the Committees on Ways and Means and Agriculture and Food on Senate number 2987 with Senators Osmeña III, Sani Angara, and Cynthia A. Villar, as authors thereof, entitled an act amending Section 109A and F of the National Internal Revenue Code as amended by Republic Act numbers 9337, and for the purposes recommending its approval in substitution of House number 5713, and taking into consideration Senate number 2749, sponsors Senators Osmeña III, Sani Angara, and Cynthia A. Villar.
Calendar for ordinary business. The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Tuesday, November 3, 2015.
In accordance with our legislative calendar, our session is adjourned until 2015 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.